So I'm talking about the perils of taking great UX to commerce, to mobile. And if any of you were here for Lynn's last presentation, you heard his kind of horror story of trying to get the changes approved for email templates took a year, where it was only actually a month of development work. So that's kind of what my talk is actually about, that kind of thing. So the greatest peril for mobile strategy for the enterprise is the audacity of the user, right? Because too often, enterprise makes assumptions about what the user is looking for and what experience they should be creating on mobile, but it's often a departure from what users are actually expecting. So the audacity is users insist on consuming content on the device most convenient to them. Doesn't matter what you think. If their phone is closer, they're going to grab their phone. If their laptop's more convenient, they're going to do their laptop. I don't know about you, but I often will have my my phone reading in front of my big iMac, where I'm looking at the phone instead of the iMac. So, and they decide how and when to access your content. So these are both talked about by Karen McCrane. So for Custom Ink, this came apparent when, in 2010, we did not have we at this point don't have a lab that's set up for mobile users, and yet this guy was on his mobile phone while he waited for customers to come to his truck designing T-shirts on a very, very mini tiny lab on his mobile phone. So that was not something that we expected. We were surprised about that. So going mobile, these are the kind of obstacles that can get in the way. So one is your technology. And I'm going to try to, I'm going to give some examples in a minute, talk about how some of these things were solved by the different examples I talk about. Technology, content is one of the biggest issues in making sure that you can take your designs into multi-device, multi-channel. Should you do responsive or should you do optimized? Should you do a full-scale redesign or should you do iterative changes? And then, should you have a mobile-friendly experience versus a mobile experience? So mobile-friendly it'll work, but it wasn't designed for that particular area. The next big issues are internal politics and change management. Often, redesign projects create changes in how the company is put together. You're going to need different people with different expertise to carry these things off. And if your company is pre-planned for that, then you're great. If your company is able to adapt, then you're golden. Websites where companies are not thinking about how change management is going to affect them, they end up having difficulty launching their products. And then, of course, the bottom line, because you don't want to do anything that's going to affect the money already coming in. You're trying to make more money, not less money. All right, so a few examples. The first one is NPR and COPE. So COPE stands for Create Once, Publish Everywhere. NPR is the poster child for content done right, absolutely hands down. They are able to use taxonomy in their system with proper tagging, categorization, metadata, and they're able to use the same content to multiple devices. And when I say multiple, more so than what we think of normally when we talk about responsive. So not only are they doing it to their desktop site, to the iPad, unique experience for the iPad, a unique experience for the iPhone, a unique experience for iTunes. So imagine they're able to pull the same data stream that they're using for their website to power the little bit of content that gets into iTunes, right? Just like that synopsis of what the show's about. You can even use COPE to worry about your social networks. So if I have my CMS powered, I can send at one time to the desktop, to my devices, and to my social network and more. What about to a kiosk, right? What about to cars? NPR was working on a concept before the Ford Touch came out about what can we do with the Ford Touch with NPR. So that's a use case most people have not thought about. Well, how can they get into the car? Refrigerators. That's coming. I've actually seen an iPad mount for a refrigerator, but they're starting to talk about refrigerators and stoves being able to also have content. And for NPR, that would be great because not only do they have textual content, but they have great audio and video content that would work wonderfully in a kitchen. Next, I'm going to talk about the responsive onion. So the onion decided to go with a responsive, so you're getting, the mobile's getting cut off over here. They decided to go responsive with their design. Text actually, for publishing, it lends itself nicely to responsive design because textual content is so malleable, right? I can shorten it up and put an excerpt. It can bend and flow into my columns the way I want it to. Once I figure out how to optimize my images and how to place my ads in the proper place, I pretty much just solve the responsive problems that I would have in any publishing site. So The Onion, Boston Globe, New Yorker, whatever. Amazon actually started with getting into devices before responsive was really thought of as a concept. So for them to go back now and say, well, I'm going to make Amazon responsive, that would be, I think, a horrendous, very expensive mistake, especially because they have very, very lovely optimized apps, right? In fact, you see in the top corner over there, the iPad app. I think it's a very dangerous app because it's very easy to spend a lot of money in that app before you realize what you're doing, because you click, 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 and you just spent $200, right? $1,000, depending on what you're looking on. And they call that one window shop. So they have their desktop property, of course. They have a mobile web property, and they have apps for all the different devices. They have the window shop. And they also have the Kindle. So if you think about it, the Kindle is also another optimized site for them because they have Kindle, the Kindle device itself, they have the Kindle app that works on all the devices, and they have the Kindle iCloud Reader, which works on your desktop, Mac, and PC. Okay, so an alternative makeover. So what if we're getting a lot of pushback about, making our designs responsive, and we really need to kind of do this a little bit under the hood, get it going, and not worry about what's happening with the main site that everybody's looking at right now. So The Guardian has actually approached this in a different way. Their desktop site is still running. They have not taken that down, but they're building a responsive site in the background. So if you go to their responsive site, you can actually see that it works on all devices. You can take, if you go onto the desktop and go there, you can pull the browser app back and forth to see that it's actually responsive. But that's so that they can take their time and do it right and not have to worry about affecting that bottom line, not having to worry about political issues that come to pass. They can do what they need to get done. Okay. So all this is great for content-driven sites. I work at Custom Inc. We have web applications. I've worked with other companies that also had applications. So what do you do when you're trying to figure out how to deal with applications over content? The banking industry is a great example. So banks have outdated technology. Their software that they use in the branches is horrible. You have to really be educated on how to use it if you want to work in a bank. Their websites are, not so hot. They're usable, but they're not the best thing on the block. However, they saw mobile as their chance to be completely innovative and do something new. So whether you're talking about, in this example is Wells Fargo Bill Pay, but whether you're talking about Wells Fargo, PNC, Bank of America, their mobile apps are really fantastic. And in fact, after doing bill pay for the first time through Wells Fargo and then trying to go back to the desktop, I almost threw my desktop out of the window. It's miserable on the desktop. It's wonderful on the phone. It's very, very easy to use. 2 years ago, I met a UXer at Wells Fargo, and he says he's now trying to get the same gains on the desktop. That was 2 years ago, so he hasn't won that war yet. But they did see the mobile as a chance to do that. So while we're at it, what if you're a new bank on the block, right? You can start out doing the right thing. So Simple's, user interface, whether you're on desktop or whether you're on mobile, is spot on. It's very nice, and they have features that a lot of the other banks have not yet been able to figure out how to do. So if you're coming around today, it's great. You can have the newer technology, the new databases, whatever. Time Warner Cable is an example of a good site that uses both kind of marketing and content, but also has applications. So if you're going into their My Service area, that's all application-based. With Time Warner Cable, they're moving from static HTML pages to database-driven pages. They actually went with Adobe CQ5 as their CMS, which is Content Management System, for those of you who don't know that. So what they did was they had planned to do a whole round of desktop optimized and then go back and do a round of mobile optimized. But about a third of the way through the project, they were like, well, this is ridiculous. We could just, hit it all at the same time. Let's be responsive. So their website is actually responsive desktop first. So it's mobile friendly. It's not necessarily the best experience for mobile, but it works. One of the reasons why they wanted to rush and go ahead and do responsive versus doing the optimize is that they realized that for both the sales channel and the help channel, it's more important to be on mobile than to be on the desktop. If you're buying service and you have none, you probably have a phone, so you can buy the service. If your service goes out, you're probably going to go to your phone to get service. So it was very important that those two channels had the ability to be accessed by mobile, so that's why they went with responsive. Now, one of the things that they did was a huge, huge, huge change in management in the middle of this project. They realized they did not have the right content people to carry this off. They needed to get more content strategists, and they needed to get a load of just content producers in order to carry off their needs for this website. And not just Time Warner Cable proper, but their other sites, so Business Class, Roadrunner, which is now MyTWC or something like that. They needed to bring all those properties together and have shareable content. So they needed the content people who could be able to think about that happening. How do I say, I've got this my account issue that I want to show up on my logged in Roadrunner page. I have my logged in Roadrunner page with information about my account. So how do I get that to happen? You need shareable content to do that, and you need people to be able to create that content. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is how do we make the decision at Custom Inc. to actually go into mobile in the first place. So for Custom Inc., this is our lab for any of you who've designed shirts with us. If you haven't, you must at least go check out our lab. It's fabulous. So this is what the guy in the truck was working with. So he didn't even get the whole lab, and he's had to go landscape. But he's doing it, right? So we need to make sure to make this more helpful for them. So in 2011, mobile traffic for Custom Inc. was less than 10%. We were slower in the market for mobile users to kind of pick up with us. So there wasn't a big rush for us to worry about the mobile landscape. Most of our traffic, overall traffic, came from customer referrals, SEO, and paid search, and our paid search was only on desktop, not on mobile. At that time, if you went to the site on mobile, you got a landing page that said, oops, you're in uncharted territory. It was very important for Custom Inc. that our experience is really good, and we didn't want people to have a bad experience, so we just said, don't do this, go to the desktop. But of course, what we found is that people just didn't even return. We were losing those customers. Natural search began to send more and more users, mobile users, to the site. They would look for custom t-shirts, and they would find Custom Inc. and they would get blocked. So it was decided that we should go ahead and remove the error page, let them pinch and zoom. So at least, even though it's not mobilely optimized, it's mobile friendly, they can get to it, they can use it. We also did some fixes on the design to make it more touch friendly. So even though it's too big for the space, it works now. In 2012, we began to spend money on TV ads. And we found from doing that we had a big push towards mobile, because people most likely sitting in front of their TV had their phone over having a desktop or even a laptop. So we had a lot of people calling in. And in fact, in the very beginning, our TV commercials had a phone number to call that was the same as our regular phone number for calling in to make shirts. And we'd have people calling in saying things like, oh, you make custom t-shirts, you make custom products. And we had to figure out that we needed to change the number to send them to a different venue, because we weren't really expecting them to call that immediately on their kind of research discovery phase. They weren't ready to make a t-shirt, they just want to know who we were. So the other thing that we did to follow up with this is that we created just a one-page homepage for mobile, so there was at least a landing page that showed that we were an authentic company and they can get some brief information about us, to move forward. And then, of course, the other thing that raised the need for mobile is sharing. So even though I might have made the decision to go ahead on the desktop and create my design, if I shared a design through email to a buddy, they might see that email on their phone and then click through and say, oh, well, I can't really see the design because it's really small on the phone. So we need to make sure that those people who are kind of our secondhand users are also getting a good experience. Let's see. So we did Booster, which is a spin-off of Custom Ink that is about fundraising. So you can create shirts that you then start a campaign about, and different users will come in or customers will come in and buy the shirts for the campaign. So one of the paramount thoughts of this was that fundraisers are shared, and therefore they need to be mobile on whatever, or available on any device that second-party user is on. So mobile is definitely part of that. And then it doesn't have any impacts on our main Custom Ink site. So it was a great place to experiment without having to worry about, well, what about the bottom line of what we are already doing on our main site? So if you were to go to Booster, you would see that it is mobile friendly for all of the tracks that a t-shirt buyer would go through, the home page, through the product page, through the checkout cart. Okay. So, a little recap on what drives mobile usage: TV commercials, email, Facebook, sharing, group purchases, so more than one person buying, and then, of course, Booster. So what do mobile users want to do on Custom Ink? They want to do everything they're doing on the desktop. We surveyed, and we asked both people who were current or who had purchased from Custom Ink in the past, and then people who have never purchased or Custom Ink, and we asked them a set of questions, and they all wanted to do the same thing. So this holds truth with, users want your content available everywhere. But when your content's a lab, you've got to figure out exactly how to make that work when your content is applications. And we actually got this quote over here from a user. While I realize there are limitations to the site developer, as a general rule, I feel that anything available on the site should be available mobile. So, they're actually saying, make it mobile. So the way ahead for Custom Ink. So, we looked at all these different examples of what people are doing, optimized versus responsive. They're doing, creating these content systems, et cetera. So creating a strategy for Custom Ink can both, at the same time, it's exciting and it's terrifying. We do have the same struggles that any other company has, trying to figure out how does that work, making sure that we get the stakeholder buy-in. They all want mobile, convincing them that, this is the road ahead, can sometimes be hard. All the strategies mentioned before, all of them come with wins and all of them come with risk. And so what we've kind of decided to do is just to do what works for each experience of the site. So if we have sections of the site that will work well responsively, especially our content pages, let's just make them responsive, right? We can probably go through right now and make probably 80% of our site responsive by just doing that. If those areas need to be optimized for some particular reason, it helps the user experience that better on the device they're using, then let's make that piece optimized. In the end of the day, we still want people to be able to find out who we are, get help if they need it, and buy custom products. So as long as we can make that happen on whatever device they come to, then we've reached our goal. And that's it. Any questions?
Did you guys, I missed the beginning. So,
sure.
But I'm curious if you did any thinking around whether to go native app, or to go mobile web, specifically mobile web optimized. And if so, any takeaways from that conversation?
We're still currently exploring whether we're going to do an app. We're probably going to hit doing a web app first. Because we'll get the biggest bang for our buck. So the question that the team that's working on that now is going through is whether they have a responsive lab or whether they're going to need to, in fact, build two labs. And that's what they're exploring right now. But they're open to the possibilities of both. And of course, we're open in the long run for a web app, for an app. The issue with an app then is also you have to make one for multiple devices versus a website where it's everybody can use it. So, Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks. Go ahead.
I have a question. So if you're coming up with a new set of web applications, and you mentioned code and responsive, I mean, is there a best case, depending on how much interaction the application gives to the user that you should or execute on?
So if you're doing a web application from scratch, like the best case, I think it depends on the application. So, and how complex the application is. So some of the ones that we did with Time Warner Cable, like retrieving their voicemail, it's actually a pretty simple application. We were able to just actually go from a desktop designed app and make it responsive so that it works on mobile. It's not the prettiest thing, but it works and people are able to get to their voicemail. They're also able to do bill pay. If you're doing something more complex, like, so at Custom Wink, we're doing custom shirts, there's a whole bunch of options to be able to do custom shirts in terms of, the font choices, the art choices, are you adding your own imagery? So that's what we're trying to explore, is how exactly that should be done. Can it be responsive? Will it work responsive? Or do we really just want to, go the opposite way and say, here's how it works in this small device, and yet at the same time that devices are getting smaller, devices are also getting bigger. So here's experience on that big, iMac 27-inch. That's really awesome. So we're investigating that. And I think the big point is to make sure that your teams and your stakeholders are giving the time that needs to do research to figure out what your solution is. I really don't, like Lynn was telling us earlier, talking about, trying to convince the stakeholders. Like, I hope that's not the issue, that you don't have to convince anyone to do this work, but taking the time to figure out what the right solution is. I think that should take, you shouldn't go in, just dive in, everybody in the sandbox, and hope it turns out okay. So, any other questions? All right, thank you for your time. This will be up at SlideShare later today, and you'll find it at slideshare.com/UXDiva, and of course my Twitter tag is UXDiva.